Hello, my name is Doug Dortch, minister at Captiva Chapel by the Sea. Thanks for joining me today as we consider a brief message on the God who hears our deepest cries, a message that I hope will give you some encouragement for your day. Life is hard. You don't have to be a genius to appreciate that truth, do you? Because rarely does a day go by when every one of us doesn't get discouraged or disheartened. I read somewhere about how several years ago the Hayden Planetarium in New York City had run an ad in local newspapers inviting anyone who would like to make the first commercial journey to another planet to submit an application. It was probably just a publicity stunt for the planetarium, but within a matter of days, over 18,000 applications came in. Well, the planetarium recognized that they had struck some kind of chord, having received that many applications, so they gave all of them to a panel of psychologists who reviewed them and then concluded that the vast majority of the people who had applied were so discouraged by their life here on earth that they were ready to start a new life somewhere else. Well, maybe that's where some of you are today. And if I were to pass out such an application, you might just take it and fill it out in a heartbeat, because things haven't been working out very well for you in recent days. And so you'd be open to the possibilities of starting out afresh and anew any place that would give you that kind of opportunity. Well, what if I were to tell you that you don't have to leave your current place to experience that kind of change? What if I were to tell you that you don't even have to venture out of your own backyard? What if I were to tell you that the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ stands ready for you to approach Him with your deepest cries, and that God is able to lift the spirits of even the most discouraged and despondent of souls? Well, that's the promise of the 130th Psalm. Psalm 130 is one of those psalms that remind us of how God is always greater than the sources of our discouragement. Technically speaking, Psalm 130 is a psalm of lament, and that means that the people who utter such psalms are striving to balance a spirit of complaint with a spirit of praise. Complaint for what they feel to be some grave injustice that they've been forced to deal with, but also praise for the power that comes to them from a God who promises to be with us in the midst of our injustice and to provide us with power so that with God's help we might be able to overcome the source of discontentment and despair. One of the great values of the Psalms is that they put into words what so many of us find hard to express. Many of the scriptures speak to us. They give us guidance. They give us direction when we find our way in life unclear. But the beauty of the Psalms is that so much of the time the Psalms don't just speak to us, they speak for us. They enable us to bring before God the deepest feelings of our heart, our greatest fears, the troubling sorrows of our lives, and Psalm 130 is just that kind of psalm. Out of the depths, it says, out of the depths I have cried to you, O Lord. Do you know what the psalmist is talking about when he speaks of out of the depths? Can you identify with such an expression? The depths is a kind of Jewish code word for some seemingly irredeemable place. Some place in this world that appears to us to be beyond the pale of salvation. Most likely that phrase goes back to the first chapter of Genesis and draws upon that image of chaos that existed before God brought the world into being. You remember that story. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. But what is the psalmist saying here? Is he not saying that the same God who brought structure and symmetry out of the great chaos at the beginning of time, that same God is fully capable of bringing order into our chaotic situations? Is the psalmist not saying that the same God who in the beginning brought something out of nothing can bring you up and out of your present adversity? Is he not saying, with our God, mercy always triumphs over confusion? That's precisely what the psalmist is saying. Out of the depths I have cried to you, O Lord. Lord, hear my voice, and let your ears be attentive to the voice of my supplications. So how do we come to such a place of faith? How do we come to understand that when we find ourselves in a deep hole in our everyday experience, the best thing for us to do in those times is not to try to dig ourselves out of the hole, since most of the time that response only deepens the hole that we're in. Maybe the best way to be able to get out of those holes that we experience in everyday life is simply to take a leap of faith and trust that God's nature is ultimately one of compassion for those who are beset by trouble. God doesn't relish our misfortune. God certainly doesn't cause it. No, the heart of God is to deliver us from such places. You may be in a deep place today, a place of failure, a place of exposure, a place where God seems a million miles away, but God isn't. In fact, that deep place, that place that is so dark and musty to you, it very well may be the place where you can best experience God's mercy and God's compassion, because in those places you have nowhere else to turn except to God in total surrender. Ask Jonah. You remember Jonah, who cried out to God from the depths of his rebellion? Ask God. Ask God to deliver you from the depths of your rebellion. Think about Joseph, who cried out to God from the depths of his rejection. Or how about David, who cried out to God from the depths of his betrayal? Or Jeremiah, who cried out in the same way from his depths of banishment? And ultimately, there's Jesus, who cried out to God from the depths of the cross. Each of those persons felt hope had been taken away, and yet they saw in their despairing circumstances a glimmer of light, a glimmer that led them to place their trust in God. So might you, in your misery, look beyond your darkness to that same light and that same hope that only God can make possible. When you feel as if your life has become way too deep and you're ready to give up, don't. You mustn't. You still have another move. And not to another planet, not even to another place. Perish that thought. No, the God who created the universe out of the depths has come down from heaven to be with us in the person of Jesus. You can call to God, and God will answer. And from your depths, whatever they may be, through Jesus, he will lift you up to the life he has created you to know. Thank you for being with me today. I hope this message brought some encouragement to you. Cry to God out of your depths this week, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the next week. God bless you.